Okay, ji, good evening. Today we are all again discussing the project phases, but this time we are going to be talking about different types of project phases. Characteristics of project phases, as we have already discussed, the work has a distinct focus that differs from any other phase. So whatever you are including in any phase is distinct in itself because that job can be done only in this phase. Like I said, all the pre-construction work. So you have classified in such a way that it will require separate kind of expertise, separate uh, output, separate expertise, separate kind of organization. So we have segregated this phase from others. Every phase is distinct from other phases. This often involves different organization, location, or skill sets. Achieving the primary deliverable or objective of the phase requires controls or processes unique to the phase or its activities. So every phase will have its own unique mechanism, own processes, own controls, and it will be treated almost like a separate project. Um, all the repetition of the 47 processes or the 5 process groups, as we have already discussed, provides an additional degree of control and defines the boundaries of the phase. So every phase is then distinctly recognized as a separate project in which all the 5 process groups are repeated and accomplished. Closure of a phase ends with some form of transfer or handoff of the work product produced as the phase deliverable. So the output of this phase may be the input of the other phase. This phase end represents a natural point to reassess the activities underway and to change or terminate the project if necessary. This is where the governance come into play. Um, at, after every phase, we will stop. We will have a long breath. We will uh, look back, have the catharsis what we have done. We have get the approvals from the higher management, the sponsor or whomsoever is up there. They would come down, check what we have done, and that would be a point to reassess the project whether we really want to go ahead with the next phase or not. As I gave example yesterday, it might be possible that looking at the result of phase 1, management decides that this is no good work and we don't have to continue with this project anymore, and project may be terminated at this point. Or maybe work was well done, but management thinks they don't have any more funds to go into the next phase, so they can stop, terminate, or end the project at this stage. So a phase end is a natural reassessment point, not only for the project manager for the catharsis, but also for the top level management or senior management to decide on the fate of the project. Why this is important? Because we don't want them to micromanage, and therefore we don't want them to suddenly close down the project right in the middle of anything. So when a phase is completed, that point we give them an opportunity that whatever decision they want to take, they can take at that point. They should not interfere within the working of a project. That's why these points are very important. These are also called gateways. When one phase closes down, that point is a gateway. You pass through that gateway into the next phase if you are allowed to. If you are not allowed to, project terminates there. It can be finished right over there. This point may be referred to as a stage gate, milestone, phase review, phase gate, or kill point. Kill point, why? Because project can be killed at this point. In any case, the closure of a phase is required to be approved in some form before it can be considered closed. So it is not the prerogative of the project manager to close down the phase. Phase has to be closed by the same authority who initiated the project and initiated the phase will close down the phase and give the approval of the deliverable which has been produced. So that means your top level management interferes until the phase level, not beyond that. Okay. Okay, let us assume there is only the one phase, there are no other phases in your project. Then all the 5 process groups of project management would be done in that. Your project, say it is only one phase project. So your project will be initiated, then it will get into the planning and then execution, monitoring and control, and that cycle will be repeated time and again. You will keep correcting your plan and executing it, and monitoring and control will keep checking it. And whenever there is some flaw found, it would be adjusted again in the planning, and this cycle will continue until we have achieved the targets of the project. So this is called continuous improvement cycle. This continuous improvement cycle otherwise is infinite. You know, um, the rotation of this is infinite, but in project we cannot have infinite things going on. So here our objective is to meet the required product requirements. So if we can meet the product requirements and the project requirements, the cycle will no more continue. Although the things might be improved further, but we don't want to improve them any further beyond what is required by the project. So this cycle will continue improving the product until and unless it meets the required requirements. And once it has done that, then the product is in a deliverable shape. It should be presented for the user acceptance and then finally accepted. And if it is accepted, the project is finally closed down. All the assets are handed over back to the organization. All the lessons learned are recorded, and project is no more. There is nothing left in the project. So, although industry common practices will often lead to the use of a peripheral structure, projects in the same industry or even in the same organization may have significant variations. So, project to project they will differ. Some will have only one phase, while others can have 2 or more. So, this was the example of a single phase. Some organizations have established policies that standardize all products, while others allow the project team to choose and tailor the most appropriate approach for their individual projects. So when I yeah, previous slide, okay. Mhm. This diagram shows the entire process. Entire one phase. One project. Project is one phase. This project is single phase. Single phase. In case of multiple phase projects, a project has multiple phases. All of this will be repeated in every phase. All of this diagram will be repeated in every phase. Okay. I will talk about that. Okay. Okay. Here we are talking that this depends on organization to organization, but some organizations have preset project life cycles. Why? Because they probably are doing a similar kind of job. So, for example, if it is a web development company and it only deals with web development projects, and all the web development projects do not have much of variation there of the same kind, like you see, they are only doing the static websites. So if all the projects they take, they are of static website, then they have established their own project life cycle that every static website project will be divided into these 5 phases. And they have mandated on everyone that this is how every project will be governed. These are the 5 phases, standard 5 phases. You will have to divide your project in this. So project life cycle is prescribed in that case. That is very much possible, and we must take into account if that is the case in your organization. In other cases, organization may allow the project manager to select his own most appropriate life cycle, because probably the work of the project is extremely unique. You're not doing very similar kind of things in the same organization. Let us say it is a software development company, and they also develop web pages, they also develop software, they also develop web enabled services and mobile services and all that. So they do all kinds of projects. So all kinds of projects may not be governed by a single life cycle. Maybe the software project requires to be dealt with some other kind of life cycle, and the web mobile applications might have to be developed in some another mechanism, and some other life cycles may apply. So it is very much possible they could have defined 4 or 5 life cycles and prescribed that this kind of project will be dealt with this, or this kind will be dealt with that. Or if that is not there, probably project manager can be given the authority that he can select his own most appropriate life cycle. There is one other thing. If organization does not mandate what kind of life cycle is to be used for a specific project, the first thing we look around is look at the industry. What are the industry practices for these kind of projects? Say you are doing a mechanical engineering project. Mechanical engineering project traditionally in industry, mechanical industry are done in a specific manner. You will see that there would be more than one models adopted. So if you want to adopt a model from there, you can do that. Or you can take precedence from some other projects which are running of the similar kind and see how they have created their phases and take some precedence from there. Or last option is that if you have no precedence available from anywhere, you may make your own life cycle, which is not a really very difficult job. You can always come up with that. But it is just for the consistency sake that we are saying that look around first. If organization has mandated anything, follow that. If not, then look at other sources from the industry and other places, and ultimately select an appropriate life cycle. One organization may treat a feasibility study as a routine pre-project work. As I said, pre-construction work. So maybe an organization thinks that feasibility is part of the project and it must be one of the phases. So they can add it like that. Another phase may treat it as a first phase. A third may treat feasibility study as a separate standalone project. So howsoever anybody wants to treat different parts of the project, they can do it in their own way. Uh, in a phase project, if we have to repeat the same initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and then closing, and then in the second phase of the same project, do the same thing. And the first phase and the second phase, main activities are the same. No. Activities are not the same. Activities will be different. Processes are the same. Processes are the same, but if in a situation, mainly the activities are the same. How can they be? In this kind of life cycle which we are discussing right now, how can they be same? In this kind of life cycle, it's different. So that is another kind of life cycle we'll be talking about. We'll talk about that. Achha. But I'm talking about a traditional life cycle. In a traditional life cycle, the work of every phase is different from the work of other phase. Right? So as I said, unique. Every phase has its own unique deliverable, own way of working, own skill set and things like that. And therefore, it is dealt as a separate project altogether. If most of the skill sets are the same, most of the way of working is the same, but there's a uniqueness otherwise peculiar to something, then it will not be a repetition production. Let it be a repetition. Repetition is allowed. Otherwise, there's no problem in it. Repetition. We will talk about repetition. Yes, there is one life cycle which explicitly deals with the repetitiveness. Achha. You might have heard about design by experiments. Design by experiments in quality. Design by experiment, you do something and then learn out of it and then do, improve and improve and improve, and ultimately you come up with the final product. So that is one of the ways. And there is a cycle which deals with that kind of. In software industry, we do that thing a lot. Or for that matter, for projects like spaceships or even planes. This is done. When they come up with a new idea, they don't just make the plane altogether. They make a small little model first, test it in small little wind tunnels and all that, and then ultimately they decide, okay, they correct the design there, and then they make a larger model, then further larger model, and ultimately the full size model. And this is called incremental life cycle. This is another kind of learning.
I have another one in my case, in which we used to overhaul the radars. The first radar was taken in, it had a unique condition to itself. But we did the same, almost the same activities with the same skill sets to achieve a standardized output.
Right.
Then we conducted another radar with a little bit different but unique condition, and then started off with doing almost not the same, but the similar activities.
All right.
So in these two repetitions, would it come to some kind of production or?
Not really. You know, every radar you are servicing is basically a separate project and classically as a separate project, maybe as a sub-project or phase, whatever you want to call it. But that is unique in itself.
It's unique, a little bit unique.
Yeah.
There are certain unique things.
Generally, skill sets are common. Similar kind of skill sets are required.
Is the input condition of the radar is unique. The output condition of the radar is supposed to be almost the same.
Right.
Coming at one. But the input condition of the radar is different.
Right. Exactly.
So in this case, because of this uniqueness of the input,
right.
Would it be considered as a unique input? Because
it is. We are not talking about a unique input. We are talking about a unique output. But what we want to create is unique. In every case, the change from as is to be in every radar is different. So some of the one of the radar is more faulty than others. So it has to travel more distance to get that improvement level.
Yes.
Another one is a little faulty and do less distance. So there is uniqueness in every one of it.
This would be considered as a project.
Of course.
A phase of a project.
Yes. Phase or sub-project or project, whatever. It can fit into any of these.
Because I'm asking this thing specifically to write down my narrative for the
project. Of course.
I will divide it in sub-projects or phases.
As we discussed, it could have been done like, the whole, all the radars were one project, one big project, and then each one was a sub-project and things like that. Or you can have each one to be treated as a phase. If they're essentially sequential, you could treat them as a phase. But nothing is stopping you in still calling them a sub-project. Nothing is stopping you. But sub-project is more interesting when there is a possibility of all these sub-projects might be happening simultaneously. That becomes more interesting there.
No, there's nothing happening simultaneously.
But still you want to call them sub-project, there is no problem. But essentially it looks more like phases. Yeah, more like phases. Every radar is a separate phase.
And in case the project is divided into phases, every phase would be, as you said, would have initiation and planning and all.
Exactly.
Composing. Would then the entire project have its own initiation and closing?
Yes. The final product will be coming out of the last phase. That would be the closing of the project. And the charter.
The product that is coming out in the last phase is also the similar as in the second half and the third half and the first phase.
Yes, but they are different. There are 5 radars. 5 radars coming out of 5 phases.
Yes.
So all the 5 radars delivered, that is the project closure.
Oh,
they may
be delivered.
Yes, they may have been delivered on time basis.
But they have been all delivered and
completion will be declared when.
In fact, I was thinking it like this, that there was quite a lot of initial planning for initial startup of the project.
Exactly.
In which we imagined that 5 radars would be given one after the other.
Yes.
And this is how
exactly.
Then there was initiation of the individual one.
Yes.
And then there was, another planning going on for the entire project.
Right.
Indenting कितनी होनी है, equipments कितनी होनी है, आगे कितने radars आने हैं.
Exactly. The interesting part is you can have project, sub-project and phases. You can have project phases and under phases you can have sub-projects. That is more interesting. You might have the 5 radars And you say I am going through a planning phase for all the 5 radars, as you were saying. So this planning phase for this is first phase. Then maybe, the second phase is physically tuning those radars. So in that phase, you have divided it into 5 sub-projects, one after the other, or 5 sub-phases, whatever you want to call them. You have to fit the definition. But, you are independent to, if you are not going out of the definition, you are independent to tweak it anyways. You can have sub-projects under phases or directly under project. This all is your understanding and how it best suits your situation.
Actually, this is what we did. We initiated it as a project for the...
As a whole project, yes.
We started inventing and preparing and making the broader plan for the 5-year plan.
Exactly.
And then we went in and inducted the first one, and then started initiating for that particular phase of that project.
Yeah.
And did that for first one, and then improved upon the process assets.
Exactly.
Then did the second one, improved the process assets further.
Exactly.
And then did the third one, and then the fourth one, and then the fifth one, and then we closed the entire project.
Entire project, exactly. So this is a typical story of a phase, sub-phase kind of a thing. But as I said, you could have called them sub-projects also. There is nothing barring you. But sub-project gives you a flexibility that those could have been done simultaneously also. So if you wanted to keep that door open.
There are certain areas.
Exactly.
Not in my project. There was another project in which 5 radars were being done
simultaneously. Yes. So in that case, it has to be sub-projects under the phases.
Because phases cannot overlap. Sub-projects can overlap.
They can have remarkable overlap, like they can even start together. They can even finish together, sub-projects. But phases can have overlap, but a little overlap. We recommend that it should be minimal.
That can be sub-projects only.
Yes.
Which does not have an overlap. Usually a lot of overlap, that is to be a phase.
Yeah. This is just a matter of how you understand the things. Otherwise, jitne muh nahi baat hai. Everybody will have his own explanation for phases. As I said, the first time I created the phases, I was very happy about it. All the phases were starting on the same day. And that's how government projects work. They used to define phase 1, this, and they are including parallel activities in the phases, which is not really very fair, which I now understand. But then I did not understand it. But yes, it was ticking me, what nonsense what I'm doing. Because the basic, thing in a project schedule is that it should be in kind of overlaps and stairs. There should be a lot of overlaps in it. Activities must be overlapping, and it should be in stairs, right? So if I'm starting all the phases, it is not stairs. If I'm doing everything in sequence in my project, that is also not acceptable. There is no parallelism then. So we have to find some middle way, because the efficiency is lying somewhere in between.
Yes, exactly. Because if you had it's a civil project, and you have to, you have a development of like some water works, some electrical works, some actual construction of some buildings, and each electrical work is a project.
Exactly.
This water works is a project. Excavation would be, all these things would start together, and excavation of all these projects would be done together.
So, as you say, all these projects, let's call the whole thing as a project, and all these, what you call project, let me call them the sub-projects. They are the streams, they are the wires going through the life of the project, but they are the separate wires. There's an electrical project, electrical system, plumbing system, plana system, and all this put together is the whole project, right? And this is going along the project. All of them are going along the project. These are the sub-project, and they all have been cut in phases. Got it or not? So this much work till we reach here, all the plumbing work, electrical and everything must have their deliverables ready till this point. As if this is a gateway, we can check it out and clear it from phase 1. Then we allow it to enter into phase 2. Then it, like, you complete one story, multi-story building. You complete one story and then give approval of that story that all the works have completed. And then you are allowed to move to the next floor. So
the most important thing is the review. Phase end review is most important.
Exactly. Because this you have told your boss that this is the point I will deliver you this thing. You can come and check. And that is your decision point whether you want me to continue or stop him. So I am physically giving him this opportunity that he can close the project on this point if he wants. And he can be happy and he can tell me to go ahead, move to the next phase. So every phase I have to seek permission. Every phase, to start every phase, I have to seek permission. To close every phase, I have to seek permission, approval. Without that, I can't move ahead in the project. And this is the kind of control which I was talking about in governance. This is one kind of control you exercise. The most rugged control is this one. He can have other kinds of control, like I said, he can have KPIs, which he can observe how happy the people are and how well the work is going, two other sources. Not depending upon the project manager for those reports, but he can have his own reports on that, and he can, that is called evaluation. He can have his own evaluations. So that said, one project team may divide a project in 2 phases, whereas another project team may choose to manage all the work as a single phase. That means the same project given to 2 different project teams. Both of them might treat the project differently. Right? Because every team has his own convenience, his own way of working. So one person says that I will divide it into 5 phases, another says I'll do it in 1 phase. But there is no need to have phases in it. His approach is...
He doesn't want to have reviews.
Maybe or maybe not, but maybe for him this project is not a complex thing. It can be done very easily and comfortably, and he thinks he can do it that way. So, or for that matter, to make it more simple, one team divides it into 3 phases, another team thinks it should have 5 phases. So the team to team this will differ. It is a team's decision what they want. But whatever they get approved from their boss, that would become the standard then. I mean, those will be declared as the points for inspection, for approval of each phase. Much depends on the nature of the specific project and the style of the project team or organization. This is important. What is the style of the project team? How are they looking at the problem? Resolution different, right? Everybody looks at the solution in a different way. You come up with a different solution, I come up with a different solution. My solution can be done in 3 phases, your solution can be done in 5 phases. So keep the door open for that and give that flexibility to the project manager. Don't try to micromanage him. No, you must have only 5 pages and you must do it this way. If you are, giving him commands at such level, then it is more of an autocratic project. You are not allowing him to plan himself. You are just using him as a supervisor. So project manager should be delegated some authority. Okay, now coming over to the phase-to-phase relationship, when projects have more than one phase, the phases are part of a generally sequential process designed to ensure proper control. What is the benefit of having the generally sequential processes? Because now we have control at the end of every phase. There is somebody coming to ensure that this much job has been done right and it is approved. And once something is approved, it will not be redone again because it has been approved and handed over to the customer for that matter.
This happens in contracts.
In contracts, of course.
You have phase inspections.
Yes. And that should be done in all projects as well. Why not?
In fact,
it will give you better control.
In fact, in contracts, we interlace the payments.
Of course. But you see how good the control is there. In contracts, why are you doing that? To exercise better control over the contractor. Now, why don't you exercise a better control within your organization? So if you try that, it will produce better results. Yes, exactly. So it will ensure proper control of the project and attain desired product, service, or result. There are situations when a project might benefit from overlapping or concurrent phases. So there is a possibility that sometimes we may have to overlap. There may be some concurrency in two phases. Like you see, one phase has been completed and the last step was, some inspection was to be carried out. And the government person who has to come and inspect, he is wasting time, he is not coming. So what should we do?
You start the next phase.
Yes, that means the first phase has yet not been approved. It has not officially finished, although we declare. Exactly. There are situations when a project might benefit from. There are two types of phase-to-phase relation. One is the sequential, and our second is the overlapping. In light of this discussion, generally it should be sequential, but sometimes it can be overlapping. The sequential will look something like this. जी of course उधर से ये ले लीजिए गरम हो रहा है ना अच्छा आपने गरम पीना है मैं कॉफी पी हाँ ले लीजिए है क्या पानी में डालो बड़ा दवा okay so the sequential relationship आप ठंडा भी डालते हैं okay
ये पानी में मिक्सा करने वो एक तो मैं जा रहा हूँ इसके लिए वही लोग वैसे भी कर रहे हो
जी शाखान बात समझ आ रही है
सर मैं स्लाइड्स पढ़ रहा हूँ
अच्छा तो आप हमारे साथ है ना हमारे डिस्कशन सुन रहे हैं ना
अदील साहब चाय पी रहे हैं
जी जी बिल्कुल वो चाय पीने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं अभी तक उन्होंने पी Okay. You can see here, it is shown that there are 3 sequential phases, and every phase is going through the 5 process groups: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and close. Delivering its deliverable at the end. That deliverable is handed over to the next phase. Proper approval has carried out. Next phase starts, initiated, and same cycle, closing, then the next phase. So in a sequential relationship, one phase must finish as if the next phase can start. So this is simple.
इसमें एक्टिविटी डिफरेंट है ना
हाँ जी मतलब काम ही डिफरेंट है
मेरे केस में तो पहला radar, दूसरा radar, तीसरा radar
हाँ So in a overlapping relationship, a phase starts prior to the completion of the previous phase. Meaning the phase 2 needs to start earlier than the finish of the first phase. But if that is the case, we will try our level best that the overlap period should be minimal. Because as we increase the overlap between two phases, control is lost as we gain control due to sequence. Control is lost, and moreover, it becomes more risky. More uncertainty is there.
There might be certain flaws in the first phase.
Exactly.
And you carry them forward in the next phase, and then
exactly.
Cost.
Exactly. Yes. So this can sometimes be applied as an example of the schedule compression technique, okay, which is called fast tracking. When you are pressed for time, you have sequential phases, you are pressed for time. If you do everything according to the sequence, it takes 5 years. You are told to complete all the radar things in 3 years. Can you do that? You have to do this. The people who have done the initial work of the radar and they were required, you will put them on the second radar while the first phase is going on. And this way, you will, the time you overlap, you save. But at the cost of what? At the cost of control and risk. You are making the things more risky. If you are doing everything sequentially, you are safe. We only started the next radar once we were done with the first radar. But this time, you are pressed for time. So this technique is called fast tracking. You are fast tracking, you are increasing the overlap. Shagan, did you understand this point?
Go ahead, sir.
So overlapping phases will look something like this. The first phase has yet not completed, but the second phase has already started. So initiation, maybe the second phase is in initiation and then planning, while the first phase has yet not closed. So this is very much possible. One thing we have already understood and agreed, that every phase, start of every phase and finish of every phase has to be approved by the project board. Permission has to be sought. So no matter if these phases are overlapping or not, the second phase, start of the second phase has to be permitted, approved by the project board. So the charter of phase 2 will be approved by the project board. And when the first phase, which is overlapping, finishes, we will have to show it to the project board and they will come and inspect. So no matter whether they are overlapping or not, every phase start and every phase end has to go through the project board. In sequential projects, normally we already know that as phase 1 ends, phase 2 starts. So we can have the one project board meeting in which we can present the results of our phase 1 and seek permission to start phase 2. That is one of the possibilities. Otherwise, classically speaking, I said that every phase must have a separate permission meeting and separate closing meeting. Starting meeting and closing meeting. For initiation and for closing. But sometimes we can, in sequential projects only, we can have one meeting which decides the fate of phase 1, approval of phase 1, and allows the start or charter of phase 2. I'm just giving you a possibility. Yes, that can be done. Still done. नहीं कहने गया कि आपकी हाथ लगे अगर मैंने लगा दिया तो इसमें दूध चला जाएगा right. So this will describe the sequential and overlap. Let me skip this slide. This is not really important, except for look at the middle of the slide. It says following considerations determine the relationship be applied between phases. Level of control required. More control you require, less overlap you want. No overlap, biggest level of control. If there is more overlap, more lost control. Effectiveness is also affected by that, and degree of uncertainty, that is the risk. Based on these considerations, both relationships could occur between different phases of a single project. This is very much possible that phase 1 and 2 are sequential and 2 and 3 have overlap. This is also possible. The whole project can have overlaps in every phase. That is also possible. All the project is sequential. That is also possible. So all kinds of relationships could occur. Now let us come over to the different project phases. We will be talking about three kinds of project phases. One is a predictive life cycle. Other is an incremental life cycle. And the third is an agile life cycle. Predictive life cycle is for those projects for which you are pretty much sure what you want, how it will be done. You don't have to think a lot. Meaning what? That you have the requirements very well known. It is a very structured project and you don't have to fabricate anything, new plans or anything. You have to construct a house, and for construction of a house, you need drawings, you need this, and if those things are available, you simply go ahead with the plan. So such like very structured projects for which you can predict almost everything. Yeah, you can say that all the data about the project is already available and is not likely to change much during the life of the project. Therefore, I can plan in detail right from the offset. When I start the project, I will do that detailed planning for once. And then I will just follow the plan, and small little changes will be dealt by the change request. Small little changes. But this is not the fate of all the projects. There will be projects in which you won't know much in the beginning, but you will learn along the project life cycle. So in those cases, those are called adaptive or incremental project. You will plan an outline and plan the first phase in detail and leave out the next phases to be thought of later as more data becomes available. So right now we are not talking about that. We are talking about a predictive life cycle in which we already know a lot many things about this project, and almost all the data we require is available. And there is a small little chance of change.
More or less hypothetical or?
No, very better. In construction mostly we have this kind of situation.
In overall projects, this predictive nature of the project is little bit compromised. It's not there in that.
Okay.
Because once you, this thing has been used for like 30 years.
Right.
And it will be used for the next 30 years.
Okay.
So once you open it up, it tells you what has gone wrong with it.
Right, right.
And you then have to decide on what kind of inspections you need to do and what kind of replacements you need to do and what kind of repairs you need to do.
Exactly.
That would qualify to be the second kind of...
Exactly. Second type, yeah, exactly. You will learn along the way. You will learn along the way. But this is something in between predictive and, generally you know how to fix a radar. A general picture, the steps you have to go through, you generally know them. But
specifics of the...
Specifics will come later. And when they come, we will plan them in detail. This is also called progressive elaboration. Progressive elaboration. Okay. Predictive life cycles are also known as fully plan driven because they are planned in detail at the outset. Project scope, the time, the cost required to deliver the scope are determined as early in the project life cycle as practically possible. These projects proceed through a series of sequential or overlapping phases. There can be a little bit of overlap in these phases, but they're planned beforehand. Each phase generally focuses on a subset of the project activities and project management processes. The work performed in each phase is usually different in nature to that in the preceding and the subsequent phase. So this is a specific example where, as I was saying earlier, that every phase is unique in itself. The makeup and skills required for the project team may vary from phase to phase. You may need to have site engineers and surveyors and architects in pre-construction phase, but later on you may not need them. You may need masons, carpenters, things like those. Okay, this is, can you see the slide? Okay, there is a thing which is called waterfall model in IT. Waterfall model is something like, a waterfall. आबशार जैसे होती है. The water is thrown down from the waterfall and reaches the bottom. It can never go back. Maybe it is falling on one surface and then falling on another surface. So
there are steps.
There are steps, but it can't go back. Yes. So predictive life cycle, you do it like that. You divide your project in steps, and these steps, we plan this step and we move down and we keep dropping down. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we have the product.
Why are the arrows shown in the
Okay, that is a fabrication. That is an improvement, because there is always a need to improve the previous step. If there is something gone wrong in the planning, I have to go back and fix that. So going back and fixing that is that arrow. So that is improvement to the waterfall, because waterfall is not classically possible. Everything will not go right. May it be very predictive. May the life cycle be very predictive, but still we should make arrangement for at least correction one step up. So that one step up correction is being done this way. So this is an example of a predictive life cycle. In IT, we have got other kinds of cycles also. We have got a V process model. V process model is in shape of a V. Just like, you have these steps, you have requirements, you have feasibility, you have planning. So you keep checking everything at that level and fixing it there. Testing is done on every level. And once all the levels have been done, then you do the integration testing. So you can go back not only one step, but at times when you are checking something integratedly, you can go all the way back to the very first step. Anyways, this is mostly done in IT. In IT, there is yet another model which is called a spiral model.
Predictive life cycle जो पढ़ रहे हैं ये तो एक normal है.
This is normal. This is called waterfall.
इसके अंदर we have a provision of going back one step back.
Yes, we do.
We normally go one step back. We don't go
one step.
Or three steps back.
Generally, one step back element is a general framework. ना ये कुछ जरूरी तो नहीं है कि हमने exactly है. If there could be improvements to that, you might be using V process model in it. You might be using some other model. So as need be, ये जो improvements हैं सारी IT वालों ने, मैं कहता हूँ कि IT से हम क्यों लेते हैं सर? IT has improved a lot. IT gives a lot many techniques and tools to other industry because उनको जरूरत पड़ती है, उनके problems आते हैं. Or I believe that IT in itself is not an industry at all. IT is basically working for you. For radars and for everything. IT है क्या? उन्हीं चीजों को automate कर रही है ना. ज़्यादा खुद तो कोई चीज नहीं है.
Basic discipline जो है, physics का या chemistry का या मतलब chemical part है.
You are programming it.
IT is programming.
It is programming it, yeah.
Using computers to do the same thing.
Exactly, is putting some more sense into it. So this is kind of a predictive life cycle. When the project is initiated, the project team will focus on defining the overall scope. More focus there is on defining the overall scope, develop a plan and proceed through the phase. Changes to the project scope are carefully managed because they're few, and then they require replanning, and formally they require the formal acceptance, and the scope is renewed. and the plan is renewed accordingly. But you see, these changes do not matter a lot as compared to other life cycles we are going to be studying. Predictive life cycles are generally preferred when the product to be delivered is well understood. There is a substantial base of industry practice where a product is required to be delivered in full to have value to stakeholder group. Not in parts, but in full. Whatever we are delivering at the end of the project. Not like your radars that they are being delivered after every phase. Even projects with predictive life cycles may use the concept of rolling wave planning. Now, what is rolling wave planning? I explained earlier in the first chapter. Progressive elaboration and rolling wave planning. I talked about it. Progressive elaboration, I said, was a strategic concept of learning over the time and planning, improving the plan over the time. Progressively elaborate, but that the level for that is the project or the phase level. You improve the project and the phases over the time. Initially you think there should be 5 phases. Then later on you think, no, these have to be revised and it should be fixed. Phases and a level down. When we are talking about rolling wave planning, we are talking about activities and work packages. Physical activities which you have planned, you will try to plan them to the best of your knowledge, but they may not happen as you plan. Therefore, you may have to review them and you roll out new plans in waves and ultimately improve your plans. So it is a technical concept. The same thing. Progressive elaboration is happening, but at the lower level. When it happens at the lower level, at the activity and work package level, it is called rolling wave planning. When it happens at the top level, strategic level, at the project and phase level, it is called progressive elaboration.
So ये rolling wave plan of progressive elaboration, aren't they the same thing?
The only difference is strategic and tactical. That's it. Rolling is strategic in nature, and progressive elaboration is strategic in nature, and rolling wave is tactical in nature.
Yeah, as the waves roll out, you keep planning.
You keep planning. With every change, with every new thought, you readjust your plan. But this plan is, I will talking about the minute plan of the activities, estimates, and all those things.
They all come under the predictive life cycle.
No, they could happen anywhere. They could happen in any of the life cycles.
In predictive life cycles, जब आप एक स्टेप से दूसरे स्टेप पे
प्रेडिक्टिव में भी करेगा, लेकिन आगे भी करेगा. प्रेडिक्टिव में तो कम करेगा ना. राइट, लेकिन प्रेडिक्टिव में तो फिर हमने कहा ना कि हमें सब कुछ पता है. अब कुछ ना पते होने का कम है.
कोई कंटिन्यूम वाली बात है, इट इज नॉट अ डिस्क्रीट थिंग.
बिल्कुल.
इट इज अनदर ऑफ थिंग कि आप प्रेडिक्टिव लाइफ साइकिल जो है उस लेवल तक ही प्रेडिक्टिव है ना.
राइट, एग्जैक्टली. But applicability of progressive elaboration and rolling wave planning in predictive life cycle is comparatively lesser than other models. Other models are highly dependent on that. They're highly flexible. Everything changing all the time. You are standing on a very weak foundation. Your initial concept is very weak. So just make outline plan. Somebody tells you you have to climb that mountain. You don't know how to climb. You don't know where to go. So you say, okay, the broad plan is approximately how much distance is there. The crow flight distance is approximately this much. So I will travel it, without knowing anything. What are the roads and tracks and everything? Don't have any data. You say, okay, approximately I'll take this much time in reaching this, and this. And then so there is no road of this, and this. And then you say, okay, the road goes from this, so this phase will not take 2 months or 2 hours, it will take 8 hours. So you will keep learning and improving your plan ultimately. Okay, coming over to the iterative and incremental life cycle, they are the same and sometimes they are different also. But generally speaking, iterative and incremental life cycles are ones in which project phases are also called iterations, intentionally repeat one or more project activities जो आप कह रहे थे, as the project team's understanding of the product increases. Got it? So you do it for the first time, and you learn out of it, and then you improve it in next way. You redo it in a better manner, and you design by experiments. You keep improving your product. Ultimately, you reach the product because you did not exactly know how to do it and what to do. In the previous example, in the previous life cycle, we exactly knew what to do and how to do. So there is more uncertainty in this. So the progressive elaboration and rolling wave planning is more akin to this. Iterations develop the product through a series of repeated cycles, while increments successively add to the functionality of the product. You learn while you do. These life cycles develop the product both iteratively and incrementally, thoda karke, on an iteration. So it goes like this, like a spring, it rolls out. Okay, let's say, I'll give you two examples. Number one, pharmaceutical projects are normally very long. They're not like IT projects or construction project, 2 years, 6 months, not like that. They are like 15 years, 12 years, 20 years pharmaceutical project. एड्स की दवाई बनी है अभी तक? प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है कितने, मेरा ख्याल है कोई 30-40 साल ही हो गए. इंक्रीमेंटली कुछ ना कुछ करते रहते हैं ना, कोई ना कोई इंटरम दवाई, कोई हिसाब किताब जिससे थोड़ा उसका इफेक्ट रिड्यूस हो जाता है, समथिंग लाइक दैट. सो दे आर डूइंग इट, बट दे कुडंट कम अप विद अ रेमेडी एज दैट. रेमेडी नहीं आई. That means no medicine, but the project is going on for years. All the medicines you eat, they're not just developed in 2 weeks or something like that. They have been researched, and they have been in this shape after 7, 10, 12, 20 years. So in pharmaceutical projects, yes, they keep learning, and they don't know what to do. They practically don't know what to do. You are the project manager, and I tell you, you have to invent the medicine for AIDS. Go ahead.
Okay, I might keep researching for 15 years and die, and the next one will take over.
That is also possible. That is also possible.
The things would not,
exactly,
may or may not turn
right. If I give you this project, how do you start this project?
You can't have any kind of planning.
You can't have outline, and you can't have anything. You can't even know the phases of this project.
You just have to start researching on something that what comes out of it.
That is the point. That is the point. So what you will do is, you will say, just as I said, I have to reach to the top of the mountain. I don't know how to reach there. So generally, it might be this much long, and therefore I will, so he will have a very outline kind of plan that looking at the other research which have been done on similar kind of issues had taken 20-25 years. So this project will take, it's more harder than that. This has never happened before. So it might take more than that. So let me fix about 35 years of time will be required for doing that. And generally the trend of researching is that first we do study of the environment or the patients, study the disease, then we study the environment and something like that. So the first step might be, my first phase is I will go for studying the disease itself. So वो जनाब study disease का कुछ 1.5 साल का project होता है, वो सब project जब phase होती है, then they launches onto that. So after they have collected all the data and analyzed it, and whatever was the objective of this phase they have achieved, they may come up with a result that this is a very difficult job, we can't do it. We can't proceed to the next phase, we don't know what is the next phase. So they may recommend that this research must be stopped here, funding cut ho gayi, khatam. Or they may suggest that now we have done this, we have reached this conclusion, now we need to go to Congo jungles and see that mother how he behaves. So अगले 3 साल उसमें लग गए. And then they came up. There is उधर एक बूटी है और वो उसको स्टडी करना है. उसके लिए 5 साल और.
In all kinds of research projects.
Exactly.
This is, especially the areas of research which are practically very like the projects of space exploration.
Exactly. You don't know where you're going and what you will get. Exactly. You do your best of your planning, but still, it is research.
You send a probe to the moon.
Yes.
And you have to send it while search for the life in the universe.
Exactly.
This is going on for like 80 years.
Yes.
They're trying to find out life.
Exactly.
कहीं इनको पानी सोलर पानी मिल जाता है, बर्फ मिल जाता है, कुछ मिल जाता है, कुछ मिल जाता है.
Exactly. So these kind of projects are iterative and incremental in nature. Another example is, as I was saying, normally used in IT, that is called spiral model. Spiral model is you go through a life cycle. You have to produce something big, but you don't want to experiment with big. You start with small. So I have to create a big program, a very comprehensive program. First I say, okay, let me start, create a small little model. We will create the model, test it and see. The first cycle, the inner cycle is testing the small little model. If that is successful, then we will go a level up, a bigger experiment, then a further bigger experiment, then a further, this spiral will open out until we reach a target. Until we develop the same example I said, for planes, you make a small little plane model and then put it through the small little wind tunnel and all that, and all checks and everything done. Then you say, okay, that is successful. Let's make it a slightly bigger model and see if it behaves like that, and then you keep, then you go to the life size model.
अच्छा, आपको बड़ा एक इंटरेस्टिंग सा एग्जांपल है इंप्लीमेंटल डिजाइन का कि जैसे प्रोग्राम का पता ना था आपको. जी जॉइंट स्ट्राइक फाइटर.
राइट.
ये F-35 जो ये सारे बन रहे हैं इसके अंदर. ये स्टार्ट हुआ था.
Shahan, I think, has gone to sleep. Hello, Shahan? है नहीं? Talking? नहीं, वो मेरा ख्याल है कि कनेक्शन ही उसका गायब हो गया. स्पीकर ही गायब है, मेरा भी स्पीकर गायब हो गया. Okay. Connection lost.
कॉफी ने काम कर दिखाया था मेरे को बहुत रोशन हो गया. और ये कस खा के मुझे साथ भी चीजें मतलब दे दी पकड़ के. भाई आप लेते हैं, आप मुझे ले रहे हैं, आप कैसे